Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide and another edition of Q&A. You guys asked the questions and I addressed them to the best of my ability. So let's head on. Great video and insights as usual, Voya. Thank you. Longtime Boox user with 5+ different models, but a bit tired of the overcomplicated menus. Amen, brother. Bought a remarkable move, fully expecting to return it, but ended up really liking it. Like the quality, writing feel, use DRM remover for legit purposes. Cool, to place on Move as an e-reader. I wonder what your thoughts are on the remarkable PR spiel regarding focus as a ploy to cover up the horrible lack of functionality. You kind of snuck that one in right there at the end. It's like, oh, I really love it. What do you think about it? I have mixed feelings about not remarkables, but the overall use of distraction-free terminology. On the one hand, this is a very real thing that has very real benefits for concentration and the way that the mind works. And I've been doing some research through quite a lot of studies regarding specifically this and what it means to be in a distraction-free versus this distraction-full environment to our brains and to our focus and to our productivity and all the other things. And I will be making a video regarding that. Distraction-free thing, 110% a real thing. I personally hold the biggest grudge against Remarkable's marketing department for abusing this term, because over time people are going to associate distraction-free with what you just said, inability to deliver a finished product and all of that kind of stuff, and that causes actual damage over an extended period of time, because when somebody will come out with a truly distraction-free device, environment, tool, study or something, the distraction-free term itself will hold a negative connotation because of Remarkable's marketing theme and efforts, how they've basically exploited that term. So that's where I stand. I believe that the Remarkable reps that Kit spoke to during the launch of the Remarkable Paper Pro Move said that every device they made going forward will use their active stylus, no EMR. Definitely a choice. I love the RPP pen, but I get some people don't. Well, yeah, it is a choice. And from a developer standpoint, it makes a lot of sense because I don't know if you guys noticed, but Remarkable Paper Pro and the Paper Pro Move have one really awesome feature that the active pen actually can give them, which is when your device is sleeping, like the Remarkable Paper Pro now is, and you simply pick up the pen, the device wakes up and is ready for you to continue taking your notes, and then you continue on. This is not something that you can do with a passive EMR pen because it doesn't have the ability to transmit any kind of activity. You could theoretically implement it not via EMR, but you could add a little sort of pogo kind of thing just to detect, hey, do I have a contact or not? And if I have a contact, the pen is on, therefore that's it. But if I'm sleeping and the contact goes off, wake the device. So yes, you could technically do it with an EMR pen on other devices as well, but here it actually is the pen that can communicate with the device and it can tell things to the device, and therefore an active pen makes more sense because it gives the developer way more control, especially if they write their own driver. Well, then they have even far more ability to control what they want and how they want to implement their vision of a device, with the pen being an integral part of that experience. So from that standpoint, it's really good. But we've seen so many times, so many producers doing it really, really wrong. Remarkable is an exception. Their pen, for all faults and things that we have, it actually functions exceptionally well for an active pen. Tab XC pen, it's okay, it's not catastrophic, but the Go 7 pen, good lord, that is an absolute disaster, and that disaster is far more a representative of what happens when you go for a digital pen and you don't do the hard work to implement it properly. It's the lazy or the incompetent variation of implementation of an active pen that spells out bad news. But if you have competency and you have dedication, you have money behind it, and you have proper implementation like Remarkable Paper Pro does have and Paper Pro Move, then it's not bad news at all. The bad side, you're locked into that environment. Hello Voya, I watch and really appreciate your videos. Thank you very much. I had a quick question that I think you are best suited to answer, given your familiarity with the Boox Note Air series and your detailed analysis of their e-ink screens. All right, shoot. Given that the Kaleido color filter darkens the display and introduces graininess in a bright reading environment with the front lights turned off, is black and white text still better to read on the original Note Air Carta 227 ppi than it is on the newer Note Air 3C, 4C or 5C Carta 1200, 300 ppi? Yes, it really is, because while technically the Kaleido screen panel that these devices use, it has 300 ppi black and white content, right? But you never get to see that 300 ppi unobstructed. Those 300 ppi content, that content is always physically obstructed by the CFA filter, or color filter, ray filter, but the CFA layer on top. And that layer halves the resolution into 150 ppi at best. So therefore, that's why they're claiming that the color resolution is 150 ppi. But we're not interested in the color aspect here. We're interested in what actually it does to the black and white content, and what it introduces is jagged edges. Therefore, it's actually worse clarity than on a 227 ppi screen, for example. Brightness, no question about it. It's much darker than it is on any kind of monochromatic screen. So yeah, no matter what you do, any kind of Kaleido panel will always perform worse as far as contrast and clarity than even the lower resolution 227 ppi monochromatic panels. Here's a bit of a conversation, so let's just go, because I think it's an important one. SuperNote features are platform dependent, so who wants to become dependent on a single company for their workflows? That's a good point. I hope that at least in some shape or form, a standard will emerge for cross-compatibility of at least the basic functionalities. Of course, you could assume that PDF is already the format that responds to this need, but something better could be developed. In my honest opinion, I would love to hear Voya's view on this. Is this not the case where whatever brand you're using, once you've built your information management system on your device, moving to another brand sort of forces you to rebuild it, except if you don't get into any kind of metadata and just example annotate PDFs? This is an interesting and an important discussion. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, oh, if you go into one brand and all that kind of stuff, because that's a bottomless pit. But what I'm much more interested in here is the second comment, where it talks about the standardization of formats, and actually that is technically very easy to do, because all of these devices use PDFs and EPUBs. So the core of the functionality we already have. There's no question about it. So that's standardized. There's 2 points that basically arise from this. The first one is standardization of handwritten notes, whether they are in documents or in notebooks. It doesn't really matter. Those can very easily all be the exact same format. And in all honesty, they all start as the exact same type of standardization of format, because all that data contains is information of vectors, where they start, where they stop, and what is the attributes of the vector being drawn, such as pressure sensitivity that can be then translated into brush thickness and all of that kind of stuff. So there's really no technical obstacle that prevents from Remarkable uses .lines, SuperNote uses .mark, and Boox uses .note. Technically speaking, they're just encoded differently. But these are all the same exact files with a slightly different header and footer to identify where to place and kind of how to encompass all of that further on into the document. Basically, what we're talking about is the need of an independent converter tool that is able to actually take a .mark, .note, or .lines file and convert it into something else, and hey presto, it would work. So from a technical standpoint, there is no excuse and there is no reason why we wouldn't have a standardized format, or at least the ability to export into a standardized format and then on another platform to import the standardized format and convert it in the platform to the platform native format for obvious advantages and requirements that are objectively needed for each of the platforms for it to communicate with the system implementation. So that, in my opinion, is something that's much, much needed. The third aspect is actually the notebook format, and that one is genuinely a much more difficult thing to standardize because we do not have a standardized type of notebook format. What I think from the top of my head, what could be a thing is also to export into this imaginary standardized notebook format, and that would export general information that is mostly available for that general format. And then when you import it into a device, then it will be able to read out the information from the standardized format and convert what it supports. So what does that mean? Well, for example, let's say that you're on the most capable one, the Boox notebook format. That has shapes, fills, colors, layers, texts, links, the whole shebang. Obviously, links, you won't be able to export that because that's just a whole can of worms. But if we're talking about templates, layers, a brush thickness, general kind of brush thickness, is it a pressure sensitive brush or a not pressure sensitive brush, color of the strokes, etc., etc., and maybe text box and text content of a text box, that can be contained in this imaginary cross-compatible format of a notebook. And then let's say you bring it over into a Remarkable that doesn't support text boxes, but it does support layers, but they don't have the same types of brushes. So what do you do then? Well, that's where the pressure sensitive or pressure non-sensitive thing would be. And also internally, the developers would need to implement a converter that to the best of their ability, converts their own native brushes into these cross-platform compatible brushes, which are then, then Remarkable needs to implement to the best of their ability a converter that would convert from universal brushes or brush information to translate it into their brush information, pull the template out, convert it, apply it, pull the layers, translate basically everything into your own thing, and go forth with that. So technically it's possible, but it would require communication, cooperation, synchronization and everything between multiple different brands. And we're talking about companies and teams that can barely synchronize and in some cases cannot synchronize within themselves. So the very idea of cross-platform compatibility and communication and development, I don't see that happening for human reasons, not for technical limitation reasons. I'm just surprised that the frame around the screen of Penstar isn't even visible, at least from the video. It looks like uniform area. Is it true from where you are looking on it with naked eye? Has any other device achieved this kind of a match? Well, I think that's simply because we were watching the video where I was from a distance kind of pulling it up. Yes, the frame is matched really nicely, but it's nothing really exceptionally different than other devices. And I invite you to look at the in-depth review of the eNote 2 to kind of see where that frame does become visible once you zoom in and once you start using it. So yes, it's matched very, very nicely, but it's not a uniform area. You do clearly see the edge of the screen when you're using it in real life. This is regarding the Boox Note Air 4C review, one of the best detailed reviews I have ever seen. Thank you very much. Tiny question. I have the Remarkable 2 and I want to buy the new Boox Note Air 5C, which I assume is similar to 4C. I like the matte finish on the Remarkable 2 and the resistance and scratch sound that mimics the real paper feel. Is this the same with Boox? It is similar, but it is not the same. You do have that paper-like feel. There are differences. So Remarkable 2 surface is a little bit rougher and let's say a little bit more paper-like. And the paper-like aspect is a little bit more pronounced, but nothing drastic. We're talking about fine differences here when compared to the Note Air 4C or 5C. These are also paper-like, just a little bit less, so the scratchiness is just a bit less than on the Remarkable 2. However, there is one other difference that goes in favor of the Note Air 4C and 5C, and that is that they don't feel as glassy as the Remarkable 2, because Remarkable 2 has a relatively thick pane of glass on top of the screen, which is hardened glass, and that one doesn't have any kind of give, and that is the level of hardness that I never really liked on the Remarkable 2. That's why I prefer Remarkable 1 writing feel vastly over the Remarkable 2's writing feel. On the Note Air 4C and 5C, they do have a glass panel, but that glass is thinner and more flexible. It's not less durable, it's actually more durable than a harder piece of glass, but it does give you a little bit more flex, and that translates into, for me at least, a much more comfortable writing experience. You don't have that hardness and slipperiness that I do have on the Remarkable 2. Slightly less scratchiness, but also less slipperiness and less hardness on the Boox Note Air 4C and 5C. Awesome info. Thank you, Goya. Thank you for watching. Will you be reviewing the Boox Palma 2 Pro? Have a nice day. Have a nice day to you too. And yes, I will. It is on the way. It should arrive shortly, but maybe depending on, you know, when this video actually comes out, because I haven't nailed down the schedule. Maybe the Palma 2 Pro first look already came out. Maybe it will come out just after this video, but it is coming. Thanks again for the great video. I agree that ghosting on the Note Max is really bad. I constantly refresh the screen manually, which fortunately is quite easy to do. I agree wholeheartedly. I hope that they fix this problem on the Note Max. If not for usability, then at least for the price of this device. And yes, the size of the Note Max is just perfect. I use a lot of A4 PDFs, and it's hard to get back to anything smaller. Sometimes I just miss a smaller device for quick note-taking just because this one is really gigantic. I fully agree. I think like the perfect companion for the Note Max, which is still my absolute daily driver for pretty much everything, and I love its size for 98% of use cases, but for those 2% of cases, I wish there was a Nova Air that is as good as the Note Air devices are right now, to be the 7.8-inch companion to the Note Max. That would be an absolutely perfect combination, because the 10.3-inch does work, but it's still, and it is more portable, but it's kind of like that in-between zone. So it's not small enough to truly be portable for that kind of stuff. So it's still, I still consider it like a bigger device, and it's not big enough to compete with the mightiness of the Note Max. So it's kind of this strange in-between position, only because, Boox's lineup woefully is lacking a much needed 7.8-inch device. I also have not received the 4.1 update on the Note Max. They should have postponed the official release until all devices are ready. Does anyone have experience with the beta version of the firmware on Note Max? For one, it's not out yet, and I've actually contacted them via feedback and via direct email to the contact that I have in Boox, and they've escalated that and the Boox ghosting issue. But this is not the first time that I've done this. This is actually third time, and still no go. So we will see if anything happens, what happens, etc. But having received Boox for OS 4.1 on my Go 10.3, I'm now just thinking, like, even if it comes out for Note Max, do I update or not? Have you seen what the hell they did with the icons for the toolbars in notebooks and stuff? And the new e-ink center thing, they, again, just so stupid. I can't really believe it. It's just beyond frustrating and stupid. I'm sorry for the blueness here, but it's just so dumb to do this kind of wet paper towel, constant wet paper towel throwing at the, blackboard. And if Note Max was not such an excellent device as it is, I would not tolerate the Boox platform anymore. And if ever Supernote does come out with an A4, and if it turns out to be a good performing and good device, then I'm gonna switch to that like instantly. But as it is now, I cannot ignore the power and the productivity and everything that Note Max brings to the table. But the cost is really high, and I'm not talking about financial cost, I'm talking about the Boox BS cost, and that is, at some point, enough is enough, Excellent video, Voya. Thank you. I'm sure I'm not the only one who have asked, but we'll do anyway. When will we see you opening and analyzing the 5C? I'm particularly interested in your review on the fact that the Note Air 5C keyboard essentially means that Boox is abandoning the Tab series, maybe how streamlined their products. By the time this video actually comes out, I think that I will have already done the first look for the Note Air 5C on the assumption that this eliminates Tab series. I disagree, because it's not the keyboard that's the difference between the Tab and the Note series. It's the presence of the paper-like feel layer on top of the screen that is present on the Note devices. On the Tab devices it's not. Therefore they're not as good for writing because they're slippery, but their clarity and visibility of the content is actually better and clearer than on the Note series. That is the main differentiation between the Tab and the Note series, not the presence of the keyboard, because you could have always used any kind of Bluetooth keyboard on any Note device because you have Bluetooth compatibility. Those are the questions for today's Q&A. Thank you so much for participating. Do remember to ask more questions for the next installments, and thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye!